welcome along to Storybeard's Story Cabin. Have you come along for a tale? Yes? Excellent. Now our story today is for each and every one of you, but in particular for Diane, whose birthday it is, and for Paul, who asked for a story on her behalf. And this is a special story for me as well, because this is the story that I first told when I was thinking of becoming a storyteller. I wrote it myself and I told it in a story ceilidh, a telling in the round, at a storytelling festival called Beyond the Borders over in Wales. And the rest, as they say, is history. I hope you enjoy it. The Song of the Broken Moon. There was once an old lady called Margaret who lived in a small cottage surrounded by a large kitchen garden with a wide running river close at hand and a forest nearby. She had 3 grandchildren, Karina, who was the eldest, Warren, who was the middle child, and Peter, who was the youngest. And they visited her often. On this particular day, dusk was just settling. On the cottage and on the garden, on the forest and on the river. When Margaret's 3 grandchildren came tumbling through the door, shaking off the dusk and their coats and their shoes. Warren and Karina were arguing. Warren was saying, "That's stupid, rivers can't speak." And Karina was saying, "I didn't say it spoke, I said it sang to me or chanted." Warren looked at his Nana and said, "Nana, tell her rivers can't speak." Margaret beckoned all 3 of them over to look at the big pot of stew that was cooking over the fire. She said to them, "Did the surface of the river this evening look like the top of the stew here as it boils, all broken?" The 3 children said yes. Margaret asked them another question. She said, "And was the full moon up in the sky? And was the reflection of it broken in the water on the river?" Once again, the 3 children said yes. "Ah, well," said Margaret, "I have to tell you that in all likelihood Karina is correct. That she may well have heard a song or a chant coming from the river." Warren began to complain, but Margaret said, and pointed over to her bed. Immediately, Karina and Warren ran over and jumped onto the bed. They knew they were going to be told a story. Margaret settled herself in a large, comfortable chair, and her youngest grandchild, Peter, snuggled into her lap. And this is the story she told them. There was once a wealthy family. How wealthy? Well, they had so much money that they had 2 fine houses. One in the north where they spent the summer, and one in the south where they spent the winter. There were 3 daughters in the family. The eldest and the youngest were considered virtuous and good and beautiful. But the middle daughter, well, she was just considered. She was clever and strong-willed and boisterous. One day, many years before, her elder sister had called her Bibi because she was prickly like a blackberry bush. And Bibi had liked it so much that she had refused to answer to any other name ever since. And so everyone called her Bibi, although that was not her given name. Now the time had come for the family to move from their summer house to their winter house. And so the household was filled with people bustling about, carrying great big piles of things. And at one point, people were bumping into each other, and there was an enormous crash as a big pile of crockery was dropped, and one gloing, 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 as a miraculously intact plate slowly settled on the ground. The three daughters were having to pack their own things in their room. And Bibi was paying attention to one item more than any other. If it was closed, it looked just like a small carved wooden box. But when the two halves of the lid were opened up, it was a mirror with one pane in the bottom of the box and two others in each half of the lid. Bibi did not care for this item because she was vain or because she thought it made her look good, but because it held deep in its heart her secret. And so she packed it more carefully than any other. Bibi and her older sister were of an age where her parents took them along to balls and to parties. These were meant to be fun, but truth to tell, they were as much about meeting a nice, eligible young man for the possibility of future marriage as anything else. Bibi's elder sister loved these events just as much as Bibi hated them. She hated them because she didn't like the people she met there. But more than anything else, she hated them because she had already made up her mind about who she loved. And he did not come to those parties or balls. Geraint was in charge of the family's guards. For a family with so much wealth certainly had servants and certainly had guards. He was young, but he had been to war. He was quiet, a man of few words. But to Bibi, his actions said everything that his words did not. Whenever the family would go out, Geraint would accompany them for protection. And it was here that Bibi saw, whenever a beggar was asking for food, Geraint was the first to give some. Whenever somebody fell or was in trouble, Geraint was the first to help. Whenever some injustice was done, Geraint was the first to step in. And each time he did, he would say a little phrase to himself. Never from those who have not, never to those who care not, never against those who cannot. The previous winter solstice, when everyone was exchanging gifts, Bibi had got a soft leather strap made for the water bottle that Geraint carried at his hip. And on the underside of it, she had had that phrase carved into it. Never from those who have not, never to those who care not, never against those who cannot. Geraint had half smiled, had said, "Someone's been paying attention," and had instantly attached his water bottle to the strap. Now, 9 months on, Bibi told herself that was the point at which she had decided she loved him. But that was the problem. She was the only person she could tell. If her father found out, he would sack Geraint, and if her mother found out, she'd try and encourage her to marry some rich idiot. And worst of all, what if Geraint found out and he thought she was foolish or silly and laughed at her? And so for 9 months, Bibi had told the only person she could. She had told herself every night whilst looking in the mirror. Geraint is strong, Geraint is grim, Geraint is fair, my love, my love. Geraint is strong, Geraint is grim, Geraint is fair, my love, my love. Quickly closing up the lids if she heard anybody passing by, in case a member of the family, or worst of all, Geraint might hear her. So now they were moving, she took especial care with the mirror. The family travelled in a large coach that was followed by 3 carts carrying all of their belongings. They had been on the road for about 4 hours, with the guards riding alongside them. And they came to the wide running river, where the road crossed it on an arched bridge, and then the road turned into deeper forest. And as they went over the bridge and turned towards the deeper forest, they were attacked by bandits. Geraint immediately sent the coach racing ahead with 2 of the guards alongside it, and then he and the remaining guards turned to protect the family as they escaped, and to try and save their possessions if they could. Luckily, some friends of the family lived nearby, and they were able to go there, were taken in, put in the drawing room where a large fire was burning, and they were given food and they were given drink. Beebe's elder and younger sisters cried, and her mother fretted, and her father strode up and down and cursed. And alone of the family, Beebe stood looking out of the window, down across the lawn towards the forest, waiting for the carts and waiting for the guards to arrive. After 4 hours had passed, the guards and 2 of the carts came to the house. One of the guards came up to explain what had happened to Beebe's father, but it wasn't Geraint. He explained that under Geraint's orders, they had sacrificed one of the carts so that they could save the other 2. And he apologised to Beebe's father for losing the cart. He apologised once, and then he apologised a second time, and he was about to apologise a third time when Beebe's patience snapped, and she went rushing over to him and she yelled at him, "What about Geraint? What about Geraint?" The young guard went pale and started to stutter, and he said, well, we were all leaving with the 2 carts when Geraint looked at each of them carefully, drew his sword, ordered us to carry on, and then went riding back towards the bandits and the 3rd cart. We tried to go with him, but he ordered us on and said he would catch up. Without a moment's hesitation, Beebe went running down the stairs, out of the house, and leapt onto a horse that was being prepared to take news of the attack to the nearby town, and galloped straight from the house into the forest. The guards who were outside got back on their horses to try and follow her, but their horses were tired and they couldn't keep up. Beebe galloped through the forest, and the full moon that was now overhead shone dappled light down onto the pathway, so it was difficult to tell if there were obstructions in the way or if branches were coming, but she didn't care. She went as fast as she could, and she rode until she came to the 3rd cart, turned over on its side with most of the possessions gone. And there, close to the river, lying on his front, was Geraint. She went over, climbed down from the horse, and with a great effort turned him over onto his back. And as she did so, something glittered from beneath him. She looked down and saw that there, under his body, was her mirror. The 2 half doors open, and each of the 3 panes shattered. And she realised that he had gone back for the mirror He knew. And he cared. She bent down onto the ground and picked up every single piece of the broken mirror, not caring that it cut her hands as she did so. And then she carried them over to the river and she cast them out into the water. And where each one hit the water, it broke the surface. And the full moon, its reflection in the river, broke as well into 100, 1,000 pieces. And as she stood there, she thought she heard her own secret being whispered back to her, sung back to her from the river. Gurante's strong, Gurante's grim, Gurante's fair, my love, my love. And that was how they found her, Margaret said. Standing still by the river, with blood dripping from the cuts on her hands. Karina said, but he was dead. Oh, said Margaret, I didn't say he was dead. Now, Bibi was clever and headstrong and willful, but she was a young woman in love and she didn't know her medicine, not then. But this is the reason why, even now, if the full moon is reflected in the river and the surface ripples, is moved by the wind, and the reflection of the full moon breaks, you can hear Bibi's secret, the song of the broken moon. Warren looked at his Nana and said, "Is that true?" Margaret smiled and said, "True enough for this evening. True enough for a lifetime. Now, Warren, you go and set the table, and Karina, you fetch the stew." Peter snuggled round on his granny's lap and looked up at her and said, "You tell the best stories, Nana B." And then, as he always did, whenever he sat in her lap, he started to trace the faint scars on her hands with his fingertips. And that, my friends, is the Song of the Broken Moon. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel, and please do come back and join me again for another Tale from the Story Cabin. Until then, take care. Bye-bye.